Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I am so grateful you are here listening to this podcast. Perhaps you've been listening to this podcast for a long time. My hope is that it's making a difference for you and your family, that is changing your life and changing relationships in a way to open you up, have deeper conversations, and not be afraid to face the pain that you might have experienced in your past or maybe even in your present, that we can sit in that discomfort, embrace our authentic selves with compassion and kindness, and be tender with ourselves instead of beating ourselves up. In today's episode, I want to talk about reactions. What do I mean by reactions? Maybe you have a body response, an emotional response. Maybe you have a behavioral response to something someone said to you, maybe something you heard or a sound or a smell. It could be really anything. I'm primarily talking about a reaction in a relationship, or maybe you're talking to a coworker, a neighbor, a friend, and something they say triggers something in you and you have a reaction. And this is an important conversation. It's something we don't talk about a lot. And I'm going to be talking about, based on research, what happens to us when we have a reaction. Maybe our body responds. Maybe we get more intense. Maybe we feel things at a deeper level. This is part of being a human being. And I want to have these conversations. And then I want you to take this away and start having different conversations with those in your family, those that you're in relationship with, those your partners, your loved ones, your friends, to start having deeper connections. We're processing things beyond a surface level. And that's why I do this podcast. I am so grateful that you take the time out of your day to listen, whether you're doing a chore around the house, maybe you're driving, maybe you're walking, whatever you're doing. Thank you for your willingness to grow, to look within, to grow your self-awareness, to self-evaluate. Where do I have areas to expand? Where am I stuck? Where am I frozen in time emotionally? Where have I gone unconscious and I'm sleepwalking through my life? If you want to also have a companion to this podcast, grab the journal. It's a guide, if you will, at Kristen, Kristen, D Boyce, BOICE.com/free resources. Also, you'll want to get the newsletter. I don't spam you. I send you things I'm working on. I really am passionate about taking time for us to get to know one another, really get to know the people in your life in a deeper way. We're here for such a short period of time. And if you can be more of who you are, you're going to have deeper connections. So let's dive into today's episode. So excited for it. What got me thinking about this topic is my husband and I, and our reactions to different things, and whether we have self-awareness to recognize if we're being intense. And that's with our kids or with each other or something externally. I know politics is bringing up a lot for people right now. Whatever it is that is bringing out an intensity within you that you might not even be aware of, that might be your baseline normal. Someone else might experience it as angry, defensive, really more uncharacteristic of you. You can feel it in your body. You can feel yourself kind of getting worked up in your nervous system. Maybe your breath changes. This episode is for you to become more self-aware, not to point the finger at somebody else. It's for you to become more self-aware. Stop sleepwalking through things. We're always going to have layer by layer by layer. It's not like we're going to all of a sudden have everything conscious. It's an evolution of just a willingness to be more self-aware. Research suggests, I'm going to bring up research all the way throughout this episode, So it's not just me and my experience, it's actually based on studies, longitudinal studies over time. It suggests that understanding our emotional reactions can lead to greater emotional intelligence, which is linked to better interpersonal relationships and overall well being. What does that mean? That means you're going to have more connected, deeper, healthier relationships, potentially your romantic relationships. But let's say you are leading a group or you're in a family system. We want to be the healthiest version of ourselves. And when we understand and have awareness over our emotional reactions, we are going to create a safer environment for yourself and for those around you. So let's evaluate the types of reactions we have. There's 3 types. I'm really synthesizing the data so we can make it easier to digest. That's the one thing I really want takeaways when you end this episode that you're going to implement into your life. So the 3 types that I narrowed it down to are emotional reactions, physical, and behavioral. So let's look at emotional reactions. That's what I'm going to mainly focus on, although it's all connected. These are all 3 linked together. It's not like they're separate entities. Studies show that emotions like anger and fear can trigger the release of stress hormones like cortisol, affecting cognition and behavior. That's why I'm starting with emotion. This is the one where you're going to experience on the receiving end a lot. So if you see someone getting dysregulated, they're getting intense, they're getting angry, they're yelling maybe, or maybe they're starting to debate you. They're starting to, what people say is kind of poke at you. And you can feel the reaction. Oftentimes we can feel it from someone else, and then that evokes a reaction in you. You might start feeling emotionally unsafe. You might start feeling wanting to protect yourself. Maybe you put a wall up. Maybe you shut down. We're going to talk about the reactions in just a moment because it's super important that you know your reactions, not other people's, your own reactions. This is the way through to the healing process, is noticing your own reactions. Behavioral reactions indicates that bodily response such as an intense and an increased heart rate and muscle tension are part of the autonomic nervous system, meaning they're automatic. And their autonomic nervous system's reaction to perceived threats. And this goes way back. This research was actually in 1929. So this has been around for a long time, us starting to really understand how the body reacts. And this is important, reacts to stress, reacts to threats. The third thing that's all interconnected is behavioral reactions. How is someone behaving as a result of the trigger? Behavioral responses to emotions are influenced by both innate predispositions and learned experiences, shaping how we express and manage our emotions. We often no longer can hear the other person because we're in a defense state. We're in a protective state when we have a reaction. We're trying to protect ourselves from, 1, maybe it's a safety issue, 2, from shame, from guilt, from blame, from feeling bad. So we're trying to protect ourselves because we're like, what happened? I didn't do anything wrong. And so the first thing I want you to recognize is you're having a response, you're having a reaction to someone said, to maybe you're witnessing something. It's important for you to understand and be able to process, name, and really work through what you're feeling. So I'm feeling afraid. And I wouldn't say afraid as in like scared, but wanting everybody to be at peace, right? We want this harmony in the family. And of course, we work it all out. And this is what made me think about, we don't talk about reactions and that they're invitations for you to do deeper work. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. This is the beautiful part. Just because you have something that gets triggered inside does not mean there's something wrong with you. It just means there's another layer of healing that is wanting to be noticed, attended to, and processed. When I mean processed, I'm looking at body sensations. What am I feeling? Are you having shame? What thoughts are you having? And then is there what's being left that maybe go back that's old? So this is really important why I'm bringing this up, and I'm going to integrate that throughout the episode. So let's look at the psychology behind reactions. And this, I really wanted to dive into the research on this because I see it every day in my practice and in my own life. And it really boils down to several things. Let's start with the fight or flight response. We'll see this often with couples that I counsel. I'll see a fight or flight. So see a freeze and a fawn, which we're going to get to, but I want to break down the fight or flight response. So evolutionary psychology suggests that fight or flight response evolved to help humans respond quickly to threats. It can be adaptive. It's not all maladaptive. Often with couples, it's maladaptive because it's old stuff. It's not new stuff. Sometimes it's new. Of course, if you're in an unhealthy domestic violence type situation. So this enhances our survival states. And so it tries to prepare you to confront the threat, which is fight, or escape from it. You want to get away, get away, get away, get away. Like, I can't handle this. I want this to stop. And so you're triggered by the activation of the sympathetic nervous system. Remember, sympathetic is activation. That's where you're like, you feel that cortisol running through your body. Parasympathetic is when you've coming back to a calm state, which is what I work on when we do EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, or brain spotting with the client, or any somatic work. And then you have another choice that I see people do is just freeze. Many people can be in a functional freeze state for years. So let's say you had something happen when you were 4. Maybe it was a loss of a parent or an accident or domestic abuse at home. You can be frozen in time. It's living in your nervous system. You don't feel safe. You don't feel safe. So you're in a hypervigilant state. So your reactions are filtered through the 4-year-old self unconsciously, saying the world isn't safe. I'm not safe. So research suggests that in addition to fight or flight, individuals may also exhibit the freeze response when faced with overwhelming or traumatic situations. And this involves a state of immobilization or dissociation, where you're kind of there, but you're not really there. Like, you're still present. You're still physically there, but you've gone someplace else in your mind, which can serve as a protective mechanism against a perceived danger. Studies indicate that a freeze response may involve alterations in brain activity, including increased activity and what we call para-aqueductal gray area. And I'm probably not saying that correctly, so don't hold me to that. And reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex. That's kind of the executive functioning states of the brain where you can think rationally, affecting decision-making and emotional processing. That's based on Porges's work, which is the polyvagal theory, Stephen Porges. That's important work to understand the freeze response. And it can really get locked into your nervous system. So if someone's getting activated, you can go super, you're there, but you're just like, don't say a word. You're in a freeze state. You look like you're okay, but you're really not inside. So let's evaluate. Are you a fighter? Primarily, you're going to go to all these. You potentially could go to all these, but what's your go-to? Fight, flight, or freeze? Or are you a fawner? FAWN. The fawn response is a term coined by therapist Pete Walker. He describes a coping mechanism where individuals respond to threat or conflict by seeking to appease or please. Appease or please. Think about that. Others. This response often stems from the past experiences of trauma or relational difficulties where individuals prioritize maintaining safety through compliance or submission. Research suggests that the fawn response may be associated with patterns of codependency and difficulty asserting boundaries in relationships. Okay, so you may fluctuate between all of those. I can kind of go to fawning and like trying to keep the peace with everybody. I can also kind of fluctuate between fight or flight. And I can go back, and I want you to do this. Go back to the earliest memory you have. Feel your feet on the floor. Take a deep breath in. And I want you to kind of scan to see if you're a fighter primarily early on, a fighter, a freezer, maybe you tantrumed, maybe you ran away. These are all adaptive responses to things that were happening in your house. Maybe you're a fawner and you're the caretaker. You take care of everything. You keep everything going. You try to keep the peace with everybody. And that's how you stayed safe. It's important for you to recognize what is your go-to, because that's an invitation to say, is this adaptive right now? Or is this really maladaptive and it's really rooted in my past? We're going to talk about how to work through this. We just have to first begin the unconscious sleepwalking aspect of our autonomic nervous system and bring awareness to your reactions. Is your reaction match up with what is happening in the situation? Are you overreacting? because it's really rooted in deep rooted shame of not feeling good enough, not feeling important, feeling like you don't matter, feeling defective, feeling like you're a bad person. And so you're filtering people's reactions or people's what they say to you based on this belief you have about yourself. Or what we say is we kind of have a story we've developed based on what's happened in our past. We also have to take a look at conditioning. Our environment cues can elicit conditioned responses. This goes to Pavlov's dog, okay? Influence our reactions to similar situations in the future. So we can be like, it's a pattern. It's like, this is how we were conditioned to respond to something based on what we saw and experienced from our past. And so we look at emotional regulations, and studies on emotional regulation, such as mindfulness and cognitive behavioral strategies that have been around a long time, demonstrate that it's super important for your well-being to understand your body, your reaction, your intensity inside your nervous system in order to come back to that parasympathetic place, that calm place within. If we're not aware of it, you're going to keep doing automatic pilot. You're going to keep sleepwalking through your life. And it's like when you're in a car and you don't recognize you stopped at a stoplight. Did I even stop at that stoplight? We've gone unconscious. And that's what can happen if we're not connected to our own intensity. And I think emotional reactions have an intensity to them. Either they're you're almost go like you're in a hyper awareness state. Okay. Or you might go ultra calm, almost in a freeze state, not calm, like as in you're really calm, but you're like almost like don't make a move, be quiet in order to stay safe. And I want you to go back and float back to look at your parents' reactions, your grandparents' reactions, your siblings' reactions, parents and teachers and coaches. But let's start with your parents. They're the most important. Did they have disproportionate reactions to things that were happening that were so confusing? It was based on their childhood that they never really understood or had an awareness about or worked on. Maybe they were so shut down and just unemotional, not emotionally available. Maybe they were so disconnected. They were workaholics. Maybe they had some emotional neglect. So they were just disconnected. That impacts you. That impacts how you're going to function in relationships. How are you going to have a relationship with yourself and a healthy relationship with other people? So we have to start. The third point I want to make is we have to start recognizing patterns. I'm big into your patterns. What are your patterns? Are your patterns that you're a fawner and you try to people please everybody because you don't want to be liked, you don't want to be rejected? Maybe you're a fighter and you get real intense and want to debate people and you just get physically intense. Maybe you shut down and you just kind of go into a functional freeze state. Maybe you want to leave and flee mentally or physically. You have to look at, how did this even get started within me? Because these are trauma responses to protect you. So start recognize your pattern. And psychological research emphasizes the role of pattern recognition in self-awareness and personal growth, suggesting that recognizing reoccurring patterns in reactions can facilitate behavioral change and healing. I'll never forget, I was leading a marital group when I was doing my residency, and I was co-facilitating with another therapist. He had been in the practice a long time. And he taught me in this marital group, these were couples that were having communication challenges and they were getting triggered by each other. So that they were having these reactions. Either someone was kind of under functioning, someone was over functioning. They were having a reaction to their partner based on how they would look at them, what they would say, how they would behave. And he emphasized you have to look at patterns. The couple has to begin to recognize, what is their dance? What is their pattern? What are their triggers? What's the pattern with their triggers? And I will never forget that. That left a lasting impression on me, because if you look at my training in family systems, we look at generational patterns. So I always ask couples or individuals, I say, what was the relationship with your father like? What was your relationship with your mother? And then what was their relationship like? And maybe they didn't have a very good relationship. Maybe dad went and worked and mom stayed at home, but mom really wasn't emotionally available because mom was so busy trying to take care of everything. Maybe both parents worked, but they didn't really communicate with each other. Maybe there was an addiction issue in the family system that was like the elephant. They fought all the time. Maybe they were divorced. Maybe there was a loss there. We look at patterns in communication, and nine times out of 10, and I know that sounds a lot, maybe not that high, I can look back and I can see how somebody's recreating the pattern that they grew up with. It is so powerful, the patterns that we create. And what I say to this to break people like, oh my gosh, how do I break the pattern? Doing your own work, number one, which means you're facing the pain, your willingness to look and be honest with yourself on how you're contributing to the pattern. How are you contributing to the dynamic, understanding your triggers, working through your past traumas that you have, fears, what activates you, and a willingness to take responsibility for those, and then connecting to your emotions and being willing to listen and be attuned to another person, which means your kids, primarily yourself. It will change patterns. It will change generations. I have seen it. I would not tell you this if I didn't believe it's true. Anybody can heal if they have a willingness to want to. I can't make someone want to heal. And it's hard. It is hard because it does change dynamics and relationships. You're not going to get out of that for free. It will, because you're becoming more integrated. You're utilizing all these parts that have been kind of cut off, and you're recognizing other people's energy. You're able to go, ooh, I experience you as frozen, not to judge, but you'll start noticing when people are frozen emotionally. It's palpable when they're in their inner child, and not to be judgmental. It's to notice, oh, and have some understanding for that. Self-awareness. Second point I want to make that, I say on this podcast episode, self-awareness is essential to healing, breaking cycles, breaking patterns, and really working on your reactions. Studies indicate that self-awareness fosters emotional intelligence and adaptive behaviors, enabling individuals to recognize and regulate their reactions more effectively. That is what research says. And it's important to look at. If you are not self-aware, you can't change it. Maybe a fluke thing, you could change it, but self-awareness leads to change. And I know it's not easy. I'm walking the walk with you. And the more you can go, ooh, I had a really intense reaction there. What was that about? Ooh, my breathing changed. I could feel the tightness in my chest. I had a butterfly in my stomach. I felt sick. That is an indicator to say something's there that needs your attention. Pay attention. Don't do what was done in your childhood where you're rationalizing it, you're ignoring it, you're minimizing it, you're dismissing it. Don't do that to yourself. Please don't do that to yourself. It was already done to you. Take time to go, oh, honey, I hear you. I see you. What are you needing me to know? What are you trying to tell me? This is key to working through what is inside that needs that healing. Okay. Impulsive reactions versus thoughtful responses. Let's kind of take a look at that. So if you have an argument, say what's a response versus a reaction. Neuroscience research suggests that practicing mindfulness can strengthen neural pathways associated with self-regulation, facilitating a shift from a reactive to a more grounded response. I always say, do you feel grounded in your body? Meaning I'm feeling my body, I'm feeling present in my body, or have I totally flipped my lid and I am not in my body anymore? I'm just kind of vomit of the mouth. You've left your grounded, centered place. You need to come back into your feet, come back into your breath through your nose, taking that breath in all the way to your belly. Do it with me and release out your mouth slowly. Mindfulness was really invented by John Kabat-Zinn way back in 2003. Well, this is kind of the research now based on it. Mindfulness really helps reduce stress, and you're looking at things from a non-judgmental point. So you're noticing, it's like noticing the ticker at Times Square. You notice it, but you're not judging it. You're going, that's interesting. Let me just notice that. Let me just see what's it trying to tell me. What's this inviting me into? That's what mindfulness can do. We're observing with curiosity, thoughts, feelings, body sensations, and it's not a threat to us to do so. Here's what I want to say about what our reactions reveal to us. First, beliefs and values. Psychological studies indicate that reactions often reflect underlying beliefs and values, providing insights into individuals' worldview and self-concept. It's an awakening into, what is this trying to tell me? What is this inviting me to look at? My beliefs, my stories, my emotions. And this is the key that I've been talking about, unresolved emotions. So research suggests that unprocessed emotions from the past experiences can influence, which I just said, current reactions, highlighting the importance of emotional processing for psychological well-being. That was according to Greensburg in 2002. I've been saying this since I started doing this work. Is this about the present or is this something in the past? And it's hard for us to discern in the moment that it's something in the past because we think it's totally in the present. That's why being with a therapist is so helpful. A therapist you feel safe with, you trust, that you can talk to. And that's not the only way. You can also do this journaling with a friend, having a support system, a support group to be real, your real self, and tell the truth to. When a client comes in and I said, I lost my crap, I flipped my lid, I completely went off. And I've had situations like where they were walking the dog and another dog came up and it scared them. So they went off and kind of started screaming and yelling. It triggered their survival state, their fear response to protect the dog, protect themselves. I've had it when people have come to the door soliciting pest control and they've lost it on that. They have lost it on their kids when their kids wouldn't listen to them. We've all done stuff to flip our lids. And this is to hold all the compassion and grace and tenderness in the entire world to say, okay, that's an invitation for you. And it's hard, believe me, to look at our own shame and our own reactions is not for the faint of heart. So good for you for listening until this point in this episode. Good for you. You're here because you are thirsty for growth, for change, for freedom, liberation from being frozen and stuck in a body that says, in your thoughts and the stories that you're not good enough. You want liberation from that. And this is your reactions help you. As much as we don't like them and as much as we have shame by them, they help you go, ooh, there's something there for you to take a look at. And ultimately, they impact our relationships with ourselves and others. And communication research underscores the role of emotional intelligence in effective communication. Connecting to your feelings, please watch the movies Inside Out 1 and 2 with your families. It's a great segue into emotional intelligence. It suggests that understanding and managing reactions can enhance relational satisfaction and conflict resolution. This is based on research. If I can help couples connect more to their own emotions and understand where their reactions are coming from, and then decide, I'm going to process through that. I'm going to work on that body memory through EMDR or through talking about it. I love breath because I can notice the freedom that my body feels when I deal with stuff that's hard to deal with, but I'm not frozen in it anymore. I'm liberated from it. And studies show conflict management strategies. So we have the impact on relationships as communication and conflict resolution emphasizes the importance of emotional awareness and regulation and mitigating conflict and fostering constructive dialogue and connection. That's from John Gottman. It was in 1994. Whew, I am just so grateful that we're having this conversation. So let's talk about practical tips and strategies for managing your reactions. Okay. And this is one, because I've already done the deep breathing multiple times on this episode because I practice it in my own life. I'll literally go on a 10-minute walk and just deep breathe in and out, do my square breathing over and over just to regulate my nervous system. And walking can be extremely beneficial. So if you do that for 10 minutes, 3 times a week, that feels manageable, hopefully, whatever you're physically able to do. Research supports the efficacy of techniques such as deep breathing and progressive muscle relaxation and reducing psychological arousal and promoting emotional self-control. So if you feel like you're going to flip your lid and you're going to lose your, ever-loving mind, I need you to be focusing on your breath. I need you to focus on your breath every hour. 3 or 4 breaths. I really would love 5 to 6 breaths, but 3 or 4 breaths every hour. So your brain starts to automatically know to breathe when you feel that intensity in your body or you have an emotional reaction. So please know that that is so important in healing. Noticing, pausing and reflecting. Pause, creating a habit of pausing before, like what outcome are you hoping for? How do you want to respond? Like, be mindful. What is your centered message that you're trying to say? Or maybe you just need to be listening. Maybe you need to be taking some deep breaths and listening to try to understand. Empathic listening is one of the greatest gifts you can give anybody. Someone said, I had lunch with a dear friend, and someone had said, no, what really are you doing with your life? She's retired. And they were saying, what really are you doing with your life? And this is a friend she cares about. And it brought so much shame to her. And she's like, she felt like she had to make a list of everything she's doing and telling the friend, this is what I'm doing. And the shame it brought to her when the struggle with retirement is real. Like, okay, my sense of belonging, and you're rumbling through the aging process. And one of the things we talked about, and I said to her, the greatest gift that you are doing in this very moment is being present, listening, being an empathic witness. That's why we're here, to do that with each other, for ourselves and with each other. That's it. That's it. We don't have to be earning and doing all these things to have this purpose. That's a whole nother podcast. But the heartbreak she felt and the shame she felt that she isn't good enough is real. And I think that's important for us to acknowledge, that we feel shame. We feel not good enough. And that's what I wanted to tell her. Your purpose is just being alive and being present for yourself and nature and each other and spreading love. I know that sounds cheesy, but I really believe this. Like, if you do this work, more love will expand in you. I promise you, more love expands inside of you. I'm not saying you feel love all the time. I'm saying there's more love that you genuinely feel to expand out into the world. And that is my belief of why we're here. That got deep real quick. And I wanted you to know that active listening to other people and yourself and what's lying within, begging you to look at it, begging you to be released of it. You don't want to be shackled by it. You don't want to be trapped by it anymore. You can be released of it. It's a matter of making the self-compassionate decision to take a look within and face that pain and those emotions, and taking responsibility and ownership, because shame wants to take us into the dark abyss. So self-compassion is another practice that I would tell you comes through doing your own work, journaling, mindfully breathing. My brother-in-law asked me, what do you do to take care of yourself? And I listed all these things because this is stuff I do. I said, the number one thing I think I do is I process through my journal and through talking about it. I need to process. And I know that about myself. And I think every human is biologically wired to process their day, what's happening to them, what came up with them, how are they feeling? And that's what our kids need. And that's what our partners need. That's what our friends need. No, we're not going to be their therapists. That's not what I'm saying. We're going to hold a space to just empathically witness it. Be that for yourself. Be that. And I promise you, through encouragement and accountability, your reactions will be less intense. You'll notice them and able to take a breath and tend to them and say, okay, you got scared there. You got scared. What's going on? Noticing, getting curious about what's happening in your body. And if it really feels very strongly, I highly recommend a trauma therapist, EMDR, somatic therapist that can help you. There's lots of modalities, amazing therapists out there that can help if you need that. Free support groups online, so many podcasts, so many books. And I think It's Not Always Depression by Hillary Jacobs Hendel. She was on our show. I'll link that episode, or Ella, my podcast editor, who's amazing. She can link that in the show notes. So you have that previous episode, can help on triggers and the change triangle and emotional connection. So thank you for listening today. If you take one takeaway, I encourage you to get curious and begin to notice your patterns. Begin to notice what's going on inside of your body and emotionally when you feel triggered and how you're reacting. And take time to soothe, to breathe, to walk, and to just start exploring what might be underneath that. Thank you for being you. And this is not a substitute for therapy. So I do want to say that. So just if anything brought anything up with you today, I highly recommend, again, joining a support group, going to therapy. You can go back and binge listen to this close the chapter. I have so many thought leaders that are here that are giving really some amazing recommendations for free. So I care about you deeply, and I want the healing for you more than I can even say in words. And I'm walking the walk with you. You are loved, you matter, you're important, and you're enough. And bravo to you. If no one's telling you I'm proud of you of doing this work, I am incredibly proud of you. This is not for the faint of heart, and you're here and you're doing it. Keep going, and let me know if there's any other episodes you want to hear anything on. You can tag me on social media at Kristen D. Boyce on Instagram, TikTok. I think it's Kristen Boyce. Still don't know how to do that at all. And then Facebook. You can find me on all the platforms. So thank you for listening. Share this with somebody and have a deeper conversation. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week, and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, Kristen, D, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks, and have a great day.